last couple of weeks, there has been ongoing negotiations between RMT and Network Rail. Now, this week, the negotiations had actually broken down. Now, the strikes are set to be the biggest since 1989. At the time of filming, they're supposed to be striking today. By the time we publish this, things may have changed. But what is the truth surrounding these strikes? Now, contrary to what many people are saying, the strikes aren't mainly about pay. An anonymous worker had this to say to Sky News. "The issue that I have is nothing to do with money," he said. "Every reporter and news station across the country is just focusing on pay. This strike is mainly about safety. Network Rail wants to cut 2,000 operative jobs just on my route alone." Now, for some reason, some people and some journalists seem to think the drivers are on strike. The drivers are not on strike. Why are these corporate mouthpieces paid so well yet can't do the utmost basic fact checking? Now, here's another truth, which the legacy media will largely ignore. Andrew Haynes, who was the CEO of Network Rail, took home £585,000 in 2021. Jeremy Westlake, who was the CFO, earned around £415,000. Now, if you add up the top 10 people working at Network Rail, their combined income is £3.68 million per year. Where is the outrage from these massive fat cat bosses earning a ridiculously large wage? Why is the media and the media class in uproar because workers dare to stand up for themselves? No, strikers aren't being greedy. They haven't had a pay rise in the last 3 years. Now, if you account for inflation, that's a real terms pay cut, and that applies to pretty much about everybody in this country. No one, and I mean no one, should accept their standard of living dropping when doing the same work. And I'm so sick of these corporate mouthpieces sneering at workers. You've got people appearing on TV saying that, workers wanting a higher wage is inflation busting wages. Well, hold on a second. If the CEO of Network Rail is earning £500,000 a year, why is no fucker saying that's inflation busting? Just think for 1 second. Why is there a massive outrage when it comes to workers withdrawing their labour? They have a right to do so. Is it inconvenient for the public? Of course it is. It is inconvenient. There's been times when strikes has made it harder for me to get from A to B. But I absolutely accept that because I stand in solidarity with the workers. Now, do not fall into the trap of division. You're going to hear some people compare the salaries of train drivers who, once again, aren't striking, and the salaries of other professions like nurses. And they're going to compare the two. They're trying to divide the working class against each other. Now, on average, a train driver does earn 54 grand a year. It's not a bad wage. Compared to nurses, their average is £33,384. So what does that mean? It means join a union. It means don't allow those in positions of power to deflect our anger amongst our fellow workers when CEOs are earning hundreds and hundreds of £1,000s a year. It's a deliberate divide and rule tactic. Now, I have a clip here from the LBC with Nick Ferrari absolutely embarrassing himself when arguing against strikes. Take a look.
If they don't want to work on the railways, don't do something else. Go and be a piano tuner. No one is forced to be a railway guard. No one is forced to stand on a platform making announcements and having some Herbert come up and says, which is the fastest train to London Bridge, where you need platform 3 sport. No one is forced. Don't do it. Go and do something else. Go and be a Premier League footballer.
But not everybody can be a Premier League
footballer. Well, there you go then. You'll have to be a rail guard, won't you?
What? Oh, if you don't like it, become a piano tuner. These are the sort of muppets that we have in our mainstream media. Now, Nick, no one is forced into work. No one's forced to do that job. In one way or another, we are all coerced into work. We all need to eat. We all need clothes on our backs. We all need a roof over our head. In order to participate in society, we have to work. So actually, in a way, we are forced to work. Now, we spend 50% of our waking lives, which not like feels like 90% of it, just so we can exist in society. Now, there are also people that, they might enjoy their job. They might have a passion for it. So just because they want better pay and conditions, what the hell is wrong with that? Please tell me, what is wrong with that? Now, since Ferrari is earning a nice fat wage on his nice comfy chair, he clearly doesn't know what it's like out there, otherwise he wouldn't be espousing this utter crap. After decades of neoliberalism, after decades of austerity, low pay, precarious work is becoming the norm. So it is a lot harder to get a job these days. And of course, people are going to be inconvenienced. That is the point. That is the point of striking. What bargaining power do workers have if it made no difference? Now, it also proves how incredibly valuable workers are, because these are only 3 24-hour strikes. So a few strikes seem to cause mayhem. That means these workers are integral. That means they deserve better pay and conditions. Now, what if a CEO dies? What happens? Nothing. All the decisions go down to the board of directors. Everything continues as is. But if the cleaners don't turn up, if the cashiers don't turn up, the sales advisors, if the workers themselves don't turn up, businesses close. All through the pandemic, we were saying about how all these key workers were the backbone of our country and our society. Yet we seem to have forgotten that very fucking quickly, haven't we? Now, this is a clip from Boris Johnson, our Prime Minister, who seems to be amping up the wage constraint rhetoric. Have a quick look.
If wages continually chase the increase in prices, then we risk a wage price spiral.
Now, as I just heard, he thinks that wages increasing could add to an inflation spiral. There's actually contention as to what is causing inflation. Some people are saying it's the energy companies making record profits. People on the political right and conservatives, Boris Johnson, saying that wages are causing inflation, even though historically wages are low. So that's complete rubbish. But inflation is at 11% when you account for housing costs. This is abnormal. This is a crisis. This is a global issue. So it's not wages causing that. And our Prime Minister, whilst he's drumming up the rhetoric around wages cause inflation, at the same time, Rishi Sunak is right now in the process of easing restrictions of pay from bosses in the city. If anyone tells you that unions are starting a class war, it is complete bullshit. This government is taking the fucking piss out of us, literally changing policy to allow bosses to get even richer, whilst at the same time we are in a cost of living crisis, and demonising striking workers is somehow enacting the class war. No, I'm sorry, but unions are trying to end the class war. Now, back to the discussion in terms of how wages are causing inflation. This is the inherent contradiction within capitalism. Because if wages increase, then companies are going to want to protect their profits. Therefore, they increase prices. But then wages then lag behind because prices have increased and wages aren't keeping up. And this is where we have this vicious cycle where we're constantly trying to mold the current political system, political economic system, that is capitalism, to try and catch up. And we won't stop talking about inflation for years to come unless we attack the source, and the source is capitalism. Now, for many, it feels like that history is repeating itself. You're now hearing a lot of the rhetoric in the media, so we're going back to the 70s. Well, this is going to be a forever back and forth because two opposing forces is Labour and capital, and they cannot coexist. Now, speaking of Labour, the Tories have decided to call this Starmer's strike, which is evidently not. Keir Starmer has obviously come out against the strikes, but has also instructed his shadow cabinet to not join in any picket lines. What does this mean? This means that Keir Starmer is a scab, a Labour leader that is inherently on the side of capital, just as much as the Tories. We have a government that hates the working class. We have a capitalist Labour Party. We have rampant right-wing free market economics. Wages are getting lower. The richer are getting richer. So unions are the only defence we all have.